Well, hello. How are you doing? I feel like we haven't spoken so long. Are you guys hanging in there? Huh? You're crushing through the week. Being all productive and proactive and shit. This episode was just, I worked hard for this one. It took me a while. And when you want to get the greats, you got to be patient. And that's what came to be with this. I was very patient over a couple years, and I finally got a chance to sit down with one of the leading journalists in the state, in Steve Marsh. He told some stories in this episode that you can write home about. They are only Steve could live the life that he leads. He's interviewed Jay-Z. He was in Kendrick Lamar's freaking dressing room doing a story with him at the VMAs. Like, Steve is a very interesting cat. He rolled in, and the first thing he asked me, "Hey man, can I get a sandwich?" So we got him a sandwich, and then he came and he ate it, and we talked, we chopped it up a little bit, and then we went hot. And the funny part is I had to pee really bad after we got done. And I rolled to the bathroom, and there's someone in there. Door was locked. I was like, what the fuck? So the housekeeper lady said I could go to the bathroom in the women's bathroom. So I did so. And then as I'm walking out, who's coming out of the men's bathroom? Steve. 15 minutes later, because I waited for 10 minutes. I waited for 10 minutes to get in there. Old Stevie was letting go of that sandwich. Sorry, Steve, I just told an unnecessary story that you probably won't appreciate, but it's all good. We're going to let it slide because that is who we are. Full frontal. Transparency, folks. Transparency. We live in a trans world now, so if you're not transparent, you're slipping. I would like to tell everybody to go to the Ninth Planet Out show this Saturday night. Go check it out at Pure Rock Studios. Our friend Ryan Auerbach is the owner. They are having their tour kickoff show this Saturday night at Pure Rock Studios. Make sure you go get your tickets at ninthplanetout.com or go to their Facebook page, check them out, or their Instagram. Guaranteed it will lead you to their ticketing platform of choice. And I would like to thank our partner at Lapidary Jewelers. They just made me this sick sterling silver chain that is off the chain, that is way too heavy. I've already got arthritis in my neck because of it. But oh my Lanta, Lapidary Jewelers set me up on point with my astronaut dangling from my chinny chin chin. I can dig it. Can you? And the cool thing is they can do it for you as well. Just like our friends at Shad Tracy Signs can do. Oh, you want a custom light box that you can hang on your wall or hang at your event? No biggie. Hit up Jeff Shoopy, the superstar, at Shad Tracy Signs, and they will form you a custom light box for your logo that they plug away. They threw blue light technology inside of it, and it will light up your room while making you happy. How about them apples and bananas? Do y'all remember that back in the day when we all watched Barney? And he taught us how to read. He taught us how to drink milk after eating a peanut butter sandwich. He taught us how to clean up. Everybody do your share. Things like that. It's the importance. The simple things in life that we do that add up. Like making your bed. Making your bed every morning is a character building exercise. We are creatures of habit. It's all about forming the correct and proper habits, the simple things that make winners. Tim Ferriss will tell you that. Consistency. Staying on point. All right, back to Steve Marsh. This guy right here, we have 2 degrees of separation. I learned about him through the Blue Morpho community, and it was very rare that another Minnesotan goes down to the jungle, and he told a story about it. He was doing a story 10 years ago, and he brought prominent Minnesota hip-hop artists with him. You'll find that out inside the show. I hope you all enjoy it. Make sure you go to Ninth Planet Out show, kickoff show, this Saturday night at Pure Rock Studios. Hit up Lapidary Jewelers for your ching-a-lang-lang-lang. I love you guys so much. We will talk soon. Bye. I'm gonna be high as a fucking man. And now, the stationary astronaut. All right, Stevie Brown Eyes, how are you?
I'm good, man.
Get your face in that microphone.
Y'all the way?
Y'all the way? Okay, so we were just breaking down how I got connected with you, and it was in a nutshell through the Blue Morpho community.
Right, which is it's just a Facebook group that I'm but I still talk a lot of these guys, Rosser and Hamilton's really not even on there, and then Mal who passed away.
Yep.
But so does your audience familiar with Blue Morpho?
Yeah, so I just had Hamilton on a few weeks ago. And it's
where was that conversation?
He was down in the jungle. I was up here.
Last time I saw Hamilton was in Westwood near UCLA.
What?
I was an hour late to the meeting because of traffic there. But is he still splitting his time between LA and Peru?
No, he's down there full time now.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's kind of rebooting, and they're doing a big horticulture project down there. So he's really kind of coming down, and they actually rebuilt Old Camp, which is where you were in 2009. I never got to experience Old Camp. I went straight to Heliconia in 2015 and 2016.
How far away? How far away is Heliconia from Iquitos?
It's about an hour 15 boat ride up the river from Iquitos, up the river.
Oh, it's a boat ride.
Yeah.
So yeah, we took a bus.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we take a boat ride.
And I think that was the second camp. He had an even smaller camp initially. Yep. So we were in the second camp, and then Heliconia is a bigger camp.
Super small world. And it was so rare to come across somebody who had experienced Blue Morpho, let alone ayahuasca, who lived in Minnesota. And the craziest part was, Steve, is it was the year I was a season ticket holder for the Wolves, and I just flew back from Phoenix visiting some friends who I met at Blue Morpho in 2016. And my buddy gave me first row tickets to the Boston Celtics Timberwolves game. And you and I had just become Facebook friends. And I looked to my left. Now, anyone who's listening to this, I'll get a picture of Steve up after this. He's a guy you can't miss. Your glasses, your size, your hair, go down the list. And I looked to my left and I was like, holy shit, there's Steve. And you were probably 8-10 seats away from me. And then I started getting to know you more, where it's like, dude, you're a hardcore fan. You were telling me, are you in like a ticketing group with like Adrian Peterson and some other cats where you would it was kind of like a lottery to get courtside seats?
No, that's not me. That's not me.
Just a friend of yours?
Yeah, my friend Miles had tickets for a while. He worked at Fallon McElligott, and he had tickets that were right behind Thibodeau's kind of that season. Couple seasons there, and then I've reported on the Wolves, so I've been in the press box, the press seats, which are right in the corner there, and then my friend, I have another friend who has courtside seats on the other side, so it's just like it's like I can't afford those seats, but I've been lucky enough to have friends who can, I guess.
Dude.
But yeah, so I'm a huge basketball fan. But back to Blue Morpho. The reason, how, did I ever tell you the story how I got down there?
No, it's very interesting. I need to hear this.
Okay. I'm the senior writer for Delta Sky magazine. It's an airline magazine, and we're in our 10th year of Minneapolis MSP Communications, the Opperman's business that's downtown Minneapolis. They've had the contract for 10 years. So I've been working on that title for 10 years. And early on, there was just a little bit more like, there wasn't a formula yet. We didn't really know what we were doing. And so we had Sting for a cover. And for the cover of the issue, this must have been in like 2010, 2011, something like that. And Sting was on the cover. And the theme was the mind-body connection, right? So my editor, who's a really smart lady, Sarah Albert, she's a really smart lady from Edina, Minnesota. She has a degree from Northwestern. She used to work in D.C. during the press pool for the Clinton during the Clinton administration. Just a straight up journalist. She was like, Steve, pitch me some ideas about a mind-body connection. And I was like, all right, I have this friend, Barbara Paz, whose father owns this insane art kind of Disneyland. He's like a pharaoh. He's a iron ore pharaoh. He's he's extracted iron ore from the earth. So I don't know in terms of like environmentalist or whatever, but he has built this place called Inhotim outside of Brazil. Outside of Belo Horizonte, Brazil, which is like their third largest city, right? And it's in this colonial area of Brazil, like that a lot of their kind of food culture and a lot of this post-colonial kind of it was a lot of slaves died extracting diamonds and gold out of the earth there, but Bernardo Paz built this place called Inhotim that had like these Matthew Barney sculptures under like, it'd be like a Matthew Barney sculpture would be like a tree, a thing that like cuts down rainforest trees. And then he'd have one of the rainforest trees cast out of wax inside a geodesic dome, right? Some other pieces like, just like this wonderland of modern art. At a massive scale. So I was like, I'm going to pitch that.
And in Brazil, that's where Sting has resided for quite a while, correct?
Sure. Yeah. So like, I just thought like, all right, they're going to go for this idea. Mm-hmm. And then I'll give them and I wanted to kind of write a story about the effect that large-scale sculpture art has on the human brain, right? Like immersive art. Mm-hmm. When you go into a physical space and the entire kind of thing. So it's like psychedelic without taking drugs, right? And then my second, and then I'm going to throw a couple other ideas at them that are like way too far out and way too dangerous for a Delta Sky airline magazine. And one would be, I wanted to talk about the nature of purification and cleanliness and kind of washing and spa culture in Islam. Yeah. And I was like, they're not going to touch that one. I would go to I would go to Turkey and go to the Turkish baths and talk about the tradition of purifying your body in the Islamic faith, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I would do would be to go to this Blue Morpho camp that I had read about in National Geographic, and I would take one of the strongest psychedelic teas or drugs in the world and trip my ass off for a week. And I was like, Delta's not going to touch that either. And Sarah emails me back and says, yeah, the Blue Morpho thing sounds interesting. You should go do that. And I was kind of terrified. So yeah, that's how I ended up down there. I didn't want to go alone. I mean, listen, it had been written about by National Geographic Traveler magazine at that point. So it wasn't like, I wasn't expecting Club Med, but I also wasn't sure what I was getting into. And honestly, since then, like, there's a lot of you've been down to Iquitos. It's like the wild, wild west of psychedelic kind of tourism down there. That you have
to fly into or boat into. You can't drive into it. So
that's the thing. There was a kind of an aspect of no turning back. Mm-hmm. Now I'd been to Peru before, so I knew Lima pretty well. I did a story on cleft doctors who repair cleft palates and cleft lips. So like 3 or 4 years before that, I'd been to Lima. So I was like, okay, I know Lima. If I have to leave, I have to leave. But I don't know. I'm going to a psychedelic camp, an ayahuasca camp. So I asked all my friends, and I was like, look, I was like, if you have rudimentary photography skills, maybe you can sell a couple photographs to Delta, and that would pay for your ticket, And then I think once we're there, like they'll feed us and make us drink this psychedelic tea, and we'll vomit our asses off. But other than that, I think we'll be taken care of if you can just borrow a really nice camera. And I had a couple people who like hemmed and hawed, and my friend Dessa, the rapper, couldn't do it, but she was like, "Oh man, like I don't know, maybe somebody else in the group would or something." And I ran into Sims, the rapper, like a week before I was going. Actually, not too far from here, on Eat Street, Tom Pham used to have a restaurant, and there was a club called the Caterpillar Lounge, right?
Yeah.
And we were eating chicken wings, and I ran into Sims, and I was like, hey, I told him about this story that I had been assigned, and I told him I had some trepidation, and I was wondering, I was like, if you could borrow a camera, we could finance your way down there. It's like a 10-day commitment, and he like talked to Dessa and talked to his wife, and he called me the next day and he said, I'm in. And we didn't know each other that well, but a week later we found ourselves in this camp, with people from all walks of life. I don't know what it was like when you were there in 2013, but in 2008 or 2009, whenever I was, it was you had people from Australia with dreads, like surfer kind of like, hey mate, like total like surf bomb dudes. You had hippies from out west who were into crystals and weirdos who were into Carlos Castaneda books and kind of that kind of ilk, like Northern California, like hippies that I didn't even really knew totally existed, but yeah. Then you had people from Skywalker Ranch. Mm-hmm. We had Industrial Lights and Magic people that have been going to Blue Morpho like every other year to experience like a different kind of visual inventiveness, right? Like I think Rosser is one of those guys. He's in the group.
Okay.
A couple like LA guys, some LA guys. And then you had this one guy who was struggling to kick heroin, who had been struggling to stay clean from Cincinnati. You had a French guy, this older guy Alain, who was working the oil rigs in the North Sea and was just like severely depressed and couldn't, needed to like reboot himself in a way. And then you had Sims and I on at the behest of Delta Sky Magazine. And yeah, during the course of that week, initially I was nervous, and I was, and Sims and I were like, okay, like these people are paying like $6,000 a piece, and Hamilton is this like ex-professional golfer that like all golfers who struggle with the short game, are dabbling in magnetic kind of wristbands, and then that doesn't work, and then he starts with a little bit of like feng shui, and then the feng shui goes into like stone shamanism, and then all of a sudden he's running an ayahuasca camp for these dumb Westerners that he's bilking out of $6,000 a pop, like super cynical. And this is after I drank and after I saw God, you know what I mean? Like after I saw like illuminated script of the names of every woman I'd ever slept with, and after like considering like what had happened to my grandfather's grandfather, like going back in time, like having my mind blown. And I come out of that, and me and Sims are smoking a cigarette going like, can you believe this hucksterism that's happening here? And that's where I started. And by the end of the week, I was like, after tripping 5 times in 9 nights, and playing in the mud on the banks of the Urubamba River, and seeing nature in my own head in a way that I've never experienced it before, and really thinking that I'm plugging into some kind of like network of the natural world, interfacing with a network in a way that I didn't think was possible. And I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, Hamilton's doing okay. I think he's using tourism to preserve Quechua culture in a way that maybe wouldn't, that most contact with the West doesn't give a shit about. And so there's the worthwhile thing. And then I saw people like trying to get over themselves in a therapeutic way, in a therapeutic environment. And I think I was a less cynical, less angry person emerging from that forest. So yeah, like that place blew my mind. And then I had to write about it in Delta Sky magazine. And it was just like a shorter piece. Like I never got to tell the full story about what happened to me there. But like, how do you go that far inside in any magazine? I don't know. So yeah, that's my experience with Blue Morpho.
That's one of the most interesting things is the walks of life you come across when you're there. I was there. You were there with Skywalker Ranch folk. I was there with Avatar folk. Pixar folk.
Sure.
One of my homies, Brian Goodwin, did all the water for Avatar. You know what him and his company. And it's just crazy that...
Yeah, and there's something to be said about Silicon Valley and the whole, like, what's the festival that they have at the end of the Burning Man?
Yeah, Burning Man.
They are open to... these things that can that treat our brains like a plastic kind of thing that can be experimented with, right? Like talk about opening your head or opening your brain, and they're all in. So like I think there's like a Silicon Valley kind of connection to places like this and places like what goes on Burning Man and experimenting with psychedelics in a way that's not about tuning in and turning on and dropping out, and more about like plugging in and finding out like what human beings are capable of.
I just spent the weekend with an engineer in Colorado who worked in Silicon Valley. He was an engineer out there for years. And he's like, dude, all we were doing was, he went to Burning Man like 5 years in a row. He's like, we were just going to Burning Man and microdosing at our day jobs. That's what we're doing. We're tapped into something that we need to be tapped into so we can be as productive as we can to shape the world.
Do you buy microdosing though?
I do, because I do it. And I understand the clarity, the creativity, and the connection that comes out of it, Steve. It will benefit any professional, no matter what walk of life you partake in. It's pretty incredible.
Because here's the thing, like when I came back...
Just not LSD. Dennis McKenna told me do not microdose LSD. Microdose psilocybin. LSD folds over your neurotransmitters long term, and it actually is an inhibitor instead of...
Really?
It's actually... It holds you back as opposed to pushes you forward.
Because, okay, so I come out of the woods and I write my piece for Delta Sky. And I'm like, can I curse on your podcast?
Of course you fucking can.
I was just like, what the fuck was I doing? Why didn't I understand this more? Like, there's an unbelievable amount of literature on it that you can tap into, right? And I was like, what kind of a dummy was I? And for Sims I don't think even trusted me. He confided in me a couple days in. He's like, man, like I had plans, like I can always buy a one-way ticket back out of Iquitos back to Lima. Like I could have left this behind, left you behind. Like I don't know you, man. You know, I was like harsh but true. You know, but I did feel a little bit like an adult kind of afterwards.
Okay.
Like why didn't I do my homework more? I read a thing in National Geographic, Traveler, and then I like Googled it a little bit. You know. And now, when I emerged, I said, well, what can I do? And I ended up calling Dennis McKenna.
Oh.
And we had a lunch in Stillwater at that Jamaican jerk restaurant that Tim McKee used to have that just closed, sadly. And we had a long lunch, and he told me so many things. And I went and I read him and his brother's crazy book about their first experiences with psilocybin in, I think, the Colombian rainforest and or Ecuador, I think, and then but he told me a lot. But he was like, you're always going to have a syncretic experience. It's always going to be, you're going to bring what you have going on to these native cultures, whether it's Quechua or my friend I met at TED has a Brazilian group that's it's out of the kind of south west corner of the Amazon rainforest, and his tribe for thousands of years has been interacting with ayahuasca and also like the poisonous frog thing and tobacco and jungle tobacco and all the plants that they use to expand their mind and expand their spiritual lives, but. And then I'm bringing Disney World and the Avengers and the Minnesota Vikings with me in my head when I go down there. So you're never gonna find like a pure experience, right? But he said, so failing that, it's just really important that the drugs actually make you trip, right? Like that is the most like what you're. That they're not like putting in datura to give you some kind of scary light show or whatever. That when you're drinking ayahuasca, which is half chacruna bush and half ayahuasca vine, that it's powerful enough and you take a dose strong enough that you actually trip your balls off. That was Dennis McKenna's kind of advice, right? Because he's like, within that, then you're actually having. Otherwise, it's just ceremony is important. And all the cultural stuff that we all bring to it is important. But unless you're downloading the knowledge or experiencing what the plant is trying to make you see, then I think you're wasting your time. So microdosing, then, you're not tripping, right?
You can. But at the same time, it's kind of, the vibrational level, like the blast off vibrational level you take yourself to by tripping balls, drinking a full cup of ayahuasca.
Yeah, I never drank a full cup. I didn't need that much. Yeah.
This is kind of a baseline. And what it is doing is...
Because Hamilton, and this is when I think he was kind of bullshitting me. He would say, I don't need to drink ayahuasca anymore. This is post he had a motorcycle accident. And he's like, but I can get to a shamanic kind of spiritual place in my head without using it as without using the plant juice, right? And maybe...
Well, I mean, talk to like a Sharon Salzberg or a Jack Cornfield or a Tibetan monk. They might have, not so much Tibetan monks, but a lot of Hindus back in the day, in the 70s, they were taking LSD and they got there and now they don't need to take it anymore. Same thing with Jack Cornfield. They don't need to take that stuff anymore. And one thing you notice with these shamans is when they do drink during ceremony, it's a tad bit. And that's me nowadays. I've been on 4 retreats. I only need a tad bit and it taps me back in.
Okay.
And it's something I walk around with now. And I'm not saying I'm this fucking holy roller. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that my level of understanding is consistent. I don't forget where I've been. And I think that's probably what Hamilton was talking about. You see Hamilton now. You talk to Hamilton now. That dude is as consistent as they come with his level of understanding in what life is providing him.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
No.
Well, you see him on a golf course, right?
Yeah.
He's been doing a lot of traveling as of late. You see him on a golf course, his level of understanding and how he perceives life, nothing can throw him off nowadays. And that's an awesome place to be because he's done the work.
That's cool.
I
mean, because it was like thinking about my own past and thinking about the stories I tell myself about that past and about what I do and who I am, and it was like a condensed kind of therapeutic experience, right? It was like I was doing therapy for 3 years, except it was in 5 hours on my back, So I think you're right. There was my third drinking when this is almost 10 years. This is more than 10 years ago. And I can remember like each one of those trips.
It's a traumatic experience every single night. And it's one you'll never forget. It might fade a little bit, but you will never, like, I'll always relay back to first year, night 3, first year, night 4, second year, night 2, you know, like
that's crazy.
It's crazy.
And I always thought there was a little bit of culty kind of stuff going on there, you know, like when people would be talking about like, you know, like this is my 5th time or this will be my 37th trip, you know? And I was like, God, like I stopped counting in high school, guys, but like, but I think you're right. Like I remember like my 3rd trip, I was like, I saw some stuff on my first trip, and then I had another like half a cup. And I think in my 3rd trip I was like, I'm going to do a full cup. So I did a full cup. And I hallucinated spiders crawling out of me, and I was puking like spiders into my bowl, and it was like a lot scarier than it had been the first 2 times. And then when I woke up, it was like I was like, this is like I'm on the beach at in Inception, you know, where DiCaprio is kind of like just wiped and like, how did I get here, and what am I doing, and where am I? And that's kind of what I felt. And then I took the gas off a little bit for the 4th and 5th times. And then I had this lovely kind of vision of kind of floating above the classic, like out of body experience, like floating through the forest, you know, and like seeing the dark kind of plants, like blowing in the breeze and just being like, wow, like I'm a part of this, you know? Man, it's like, I feel part of me feels embarrassed to be talking about my trips. It's almost like when people talk about their dreams. Yeah. It's like nobody wants to hear about somebody's fucking dreams. But Freud, when he did the analysis of dreams, when you're pulling stuff out and trying to figure out what they actually mean therapeutically, I think, yeah, you can, again, it gave me new kind of metaphors. A new kind of poetic visions to try to pull meaning out of. And so when I came out of there, I was like, wow, like I'm smaller than I thought I was, and plugged into something bigger than what I thought I was plugged into. And maybe I shouldn't be as frustrated in the moment, because the moment doesn't mean as much as I used to think it meant, but yet it means everything. Again, this is like gobbledygook crystal shit. I sound like the hippies that I was tripping with all that time ago, but it did help me. I do think I'm a better person for that experience, you know, and God bless Hamilton Souther and Don Alberto and, you know, and Don Alberto's unbelievable culture of discovering if you put this plant with this plant, you know, you get this experience.
He was a rare one to accept the Western world. It was like it was a lottery win for Hamilton to even be able to show up on his shore and be able to study under him.
Right.
That was rare.
Well, I think like as they should, a lot of indigenous people should see outsiders as a threat.
White man comes in and fucks everything up.
Buys everything, extracts everything, leaves you holding the bag, you know? So, but I think it was my understanding from being down there that Don Alberto was seeing kids watch these flat screen TVs that were in town and were more interested in video games than learning about grandma and grandpa's culture. And he realized, like, in the same way that Dennis McKenna said, is syncretic kind of exchange, cultural exchange is inevitable in a way. And there's been a few tribes that have been able to evade contact and have fired arrows at the encroaching kind of photography planes overhead, and maybe that's probably in some ways to their credit, you know, like it's probably a good thing that they did that. But if you are in a place like Iquitos, in a village outside of that, and you're within the influence of the oil industry and the Peruvian government and the American government, and
Rubber industry.
I mean, Sims and I flew on a plane on the way in there with next to this wildcatter from North Dakota who had been extracting oil all over the world, and was excited to get that back to Iquitos because the Peruvian government was playing so nice. And so, yeah, if I'm Don Alberto, I'm like nervous about what this means for my people. And instead of being like, all right, let's move further, deeper into the jungle and hope like that they, instead he was like, let's see if I can find somebody cool. I can make some money. I can also pass on some of this stuff and make it like, I mean, I think in some ways he looks cool to his community, right? He looks like, as he should, like as a Jedi Knight for his Quechua community.
And don't get it twisted. Maestro Alberto is a goddamn Jedi Knight. The magic that dude works in a jungle, in a Maloka, is beyond any form of words or language could explain. The way he moves energy around, the way he's able to suck the good stuff out of you and like lets you know that you are a force to be reckoned with, and no matter what you do as a writer, as a talker, as anyone, you have the potential within you to be great.
I mean, he's a man of very few words. I do think we all yearn for a strong daddy, I think that's why the country voted for Donald Trump in a lot of ways, right? It's a pitiable instinct in human beings as well as, but an understandable one. And he's a strong dude who drank a cup of ayahuasca every ceremony and took it like Clint Eastwood.
And as a child, he had to drink tobacco juice, and his dad made him drink tobacco juice, and he got deathly sick. And that was his rite of passage. And it was as a young boy.
Yeah, the red bags of courage kind of moment, right? Like, sounds like his dad is like Bobby Knight or something.
Throwing chairs. Hey, so like beyond bringing rappers to the jungle, didn't you bring another Minnesota rapper to Wisconsin to drink ayahuasca? I'm pretty sure you were telling me that.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. I can tell this story because I love Steph and I'm married to the other person we were with. So, and I don't remember the name of this outfit. But when Sims and I came back, Sims, and his wife has had some medical problems, and they were just kind of stressed, and, Sims was just about to release the album that he ended up calling Bad Time Zoo, and I always thought he should have called The Veld, which means this band of kind of super diversity that happens around sub-Saharan Africa. But so he's going to release Bad Time Zoo, and he's nervous about that and his artistic path and what was going on with Doomtree, and I think this experience provided a calm for him.
Okay.
Provided a perspective, like a seriously like godlike perspective on the world. Like he went to like outer space in his trips and like cavorted with like purple gorillas and I think like the Egyptian god Osiris and stuff. Like I like saw like I remember I kept going to this like weird like bath from antiquity, and I saw Ganesha, who was the writer in the Hindu tradition. Like talk about syncretic stuff. It's just like it's like shaking loose all this cultural kind of detritus that we have in the back of our minds and like putting it like just swirling it around. Anyways, it really is like you come out of it being like, first of all, like whew, thank God I'm home. You know, like that's just like re-entering your own kind of body when you're done with the trip at 11:30 at night, and then when you get back to America, you're like, my God, I can't believe that. And then you tell your loved ones and everybody like, oh my God, you should try this someday, or maybe not, but like I don't know. So like that. So like, you know, for years I've been like, oh God, I think I'm a calmer person because of that shit. And Sims, I think, was doing the same thing. So POS was like, I'm down. And Maggie, my girlfriend, was like, I'm down. She's my girlfriend at the time, so now we're married. And both her and Steph, again, are artists. So artists are processing what's going on in our world and trying to make sense of it for them, for not only themselves but for others, which can be like, you know, like I think this word artist who told me recently, Terry Gilliam told me when I interviewed him, and I said, "How long, you've been an artist for a long time?" And he's like, "Oh man, that's such a pretentious word. You know, it just makes my skin crawl. I prefer to think of myself as like somebody who draws or a drawer or something. You know, like because we all try to process life and try to figure out what it means, right? It's not just these like upper class of artists, but I do think artists maybe carry a little bit more of that weight, you know, because we look to them to make meaning for us. Yeah. You know, like I'm too busy like digging ditches all day so maybe this artist can fucking tell me what like I'm supposed to be thinking about. Or maybe this artist can help me not think about life so hard.
Please, Kanye, save me.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus. Yeah. So Steph, I think he was starting to get sick, and I don't even know if at the time it was diagnosed with his kidney problems. And then Maggie, you know, was trying to figure out her way in an art scene that had changed for her. She was in a band called Lookbook, and now is like trying to do a solo thing and trying to figure that out. So both of them were like, all right, man, yeah, let's go to this teepee and drink ayahuasca with this Peruvian guy. Steve said it was great, so let's do it. So we went to Somerset, Wisconsin. And I was like, you know, then we won't have to fly all the way to Peru, you know? And this guy, so really nice people. And we all drank, and they only gave us a little tiny bit. And it still tasted as bad as ayahuasca did in Peru. So I was like, okay, that's good, you know? Like I still kind of gag when I even think about it. I know. So like, so we did just a little bit, and like it started to, you know how it feels like it's coming on for the first 45 minutes, and then it's like, oh shit. Yeah. The oh shit part never came. Just kind of the creepy crawly kind of like upset stomach thing. I don't think this situation was set up for people to trip, because in Blue Morpho you have a place where you can, if you have to take a full shower, you can. You know, diarrhea and puking and feeling like shit is a part of this. Talk about rite of passage. It's a part of what you have to pay in order for these visions. And so, like, this place wasn't set up for that. You know, so I think they were like underdosing people. You know, so then we all kind of met out by our car. Like I went out first, and then Maggie went out, and then Steph went out, and we're like, what are we gonna do here? And then the white kind of guy running things came out and was like, you guys can't leave. You can't leave. We'll be liable if anything happens. I know you don't think you're tripping, but like I'm like, I know I'm not tripping, you know? But he's like, you can't leave.
Then like, give us more, motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, I was like, yeah, give us more stuff. Or like, what feels like we're wasting our time. And there was a lot of like, again, a lot of attention being paid to the ritual of keeping the fire going. And then they served us like buffalo meat and corn in the morning, like as kind of the ceremonial meal afterwards, you know? And they sang songs, Icaros all night, but I fell asleep. and Steph fell asleep. You're supposed to like tend the fire all night long in this teepee. And the thing was like, it was a trial, but there was no payoff of the vision, right? So like Dennis McKenna says, like, whatever the ceremony and whatever the narratives and whoever the shaman is and whatever they're trying to spin, fine. But the shit has to make you trip, man. And it didn't. So not only that, was it a rough night and a tough drive back to Minneapolis, but then I was also, Maggie and Steph had both been thinking like, hey, this is like a magical potion. It's going to help me deal with the feelings and the anxieties that I'm experiencing right now.
They're feeling shortchanged.
And they felt like, man, that didn't happen. And so they've been looking forward to this day for weeks, you know? And I don't think they still have tripped, you know? I think it would both, I still think to this day, I mean, they're both like well-adjusted, real genius people who I love, you know? But I still think like, I wish I could provide this experience for them. Like I dragged them along to this kind of bunk deal. So yeah, man, that's what happened. Those are my two bringing rappers to the woods experiences. One worked out well, and one was disappointing.
Yeah, that's too bad because when you've experienced and you bring them to this place and you're hoping they can see what you've seen and feel what you felt.
Right.
And they don't get that. It's almost kind of like a liability on your end where it's like, fuck, I wanted them to get there.
Yeah, and they trusted me. They trusted me to come with me, and you know, and I disappointed them. Maybe like it's the people in the teepee that were bitching at them about like who gets to tend the fire and who sits where, and you have to sit on the ground, all the rules. But it's my fault too. And then I also I went on one kind of other psychedelic kind of tourism kind of situations. In 2000, so I've been with Maggie for 7 years. So 2012, I think, I went to Africa, to Gabon, to eat iboga.
Ibogaine?
Iboga. Iboga is the substance. The ibogaine is a derivative, in the same way that mescaline is a derivative of
San
peyote.
Pedro or peyote.
Or San Pedro peyote. Ibogaine is the chemical derivative of iboga, which is the root.
Okay.
Right? And it's if you think about Pangea, you know, like Africa, like Gabon and South America, like there would be one huge rainforest, you know. So who knows? This is another ancient root, psychedelic root that people have been fucking with for thousands of years.
And Westerners have been using it to get off of heroin.
Yes.
It's got a high success rate getting people off heroin.
Yeah, and my friend Dimitri Mougianis, have you had him on the show? So he is had a movie, a documentary, and about his use of ibogaine to treat people in Harlem and to help people kick heroin.
Why would you think I'd have him on the show yet?
I don't know. He just seems like he's a psychonaut, you know. Like,
is he from around here?
He's from he lives in Harlem.
We're in Minneapolis.
I know, but you're talking to me like, you know, Joe Rogan might be coming on. You've had Dennis McKenna.
Don't spill the beans, dude. We got a firm offering.
But you know, but like, and you know, Gary V. Like these guys aren't from here, you know.
Yeah, I had to fly Gary out. So then before this is all said and done, just link me up with Dimitri, and we'll try to set that up.
Yeah,
he sounds like an
Facebook
interesting
friend.
cat. Yep.
You should at least see his movie.
Okay.
So, but my friend Ross Broccoli did a movie that it's actually an incredible movie, man, and more people should see it. It's called Sick Birds Die Easy.
Ooh.
Where Ross plays somebody who's addicted to opiates, who's going to the jungle to try to kick, and he, you know. I don't think he looks down on people who are addicted to opiates, but Ross is definitely not addicted to opiates. But he was an actor in this movie, our friend Nick's movie, and I was in France doing a story, helping my friend out with his book, and so I was able to fly down from France to Gabon.
Okay.
and immediately go into a shamanic diet, and taken to the woods and bathing myself in streams and being painted with white and red pigmented paint, and rising every morning at 5 a.m, putting me like kind of cooking me like it was like almost like Star Wars, like they put me it covered me with like a big carpet and put me over a pit that had been dug with like smoking and burning brushes to kind of like sweat box it, and like all these people from the village. We were outside of Libreville, in Gabon, kind of like sat in chairs around me and watched me kind of sweat, but I was But I did it with this guy Tatayo, who's this Frenchman who runs a kind of Iboga art clinic outside of Libreville that they're using as kind of the set. And he was helping them in this to help with this movie, and then I kind of tagged along, and I was like, I would like to experience this. So we did that. So shamanic ritual for a week, and then I ate like 25 spoonfuls of Iboga dust. And I went into a fugue state for 36 hours.
What's that mean?
Like gray, kind of not fully conscious, like waking kind of death, Like I didn't see a vision really. I saw like a vision of in a lantern of like friends of mine kind of at a party, but that's it. And so I felt like maybe I didn't get the right bark, or I just wasn't ready for the experience. Like who's the guy who wrote Breaking Open the Head?
Ooh, I don't know.
So he wrote about the same camp.
Okay.
That I was in, and I just didn't get the illumination that I found in Peru.
Okay.
But you should see Sick Bird Die Easy, because that illuminated my life. That's a hilarious movie about white people going into the woods to try to find enlightenment.
Isn't it amazing how the perception of white people has gone from the coup d'etat to we're just a bunch of broken individuals trying to kind of be culture vultures and grab on and latch on to find source, if that makes sense?
Well, I mean, that is the kind of cultural appropriation, extracting kind of model of what whiteness is. But I do think James Baldwin said that the first thing white people have to do to fix this shit is to stop thinking of themselves as being white, right?
There we go.
But I think it also is important.
It's tough when we're perceived as white.
Yeah, and also you have to realize, like, all right, like I work for an airline magazine that can fly me to places. I have friends who are artists who are making movies in Africa. And I don't know if that's necessarily because of their whiteness, but they do have maybe class advantages that the rest of the people, some other people from the Southern Hemisphere haven't had the chance, or I don't know. So I think it's okay to think about like where you stand in the world and where other people stand in the world, and to think about like working towards a place where we can all enjoy more equality and more joy. But the fact that white people have gone and explored the other parts of the world, human curiosity, for every like 30 horrible people who are trying to like make a buck, there are like people like Lawrence of Arabia who actually had a genuine curiosity about a part of the world and a part of humanity that he shared certain human traits with, right? That he shared humanity with. He just wanted to study them, or whether it's Dennis McKenna or
Graham Hancock,
right? Or Schultz, the guy who first went down to the Amazon.
Charles Schultz,
yeah, the guy who went down to explore. Or Wade Davis, or the scientists. And
Charles Schultz made Snoopy, didn't he?
Charles Schultz made Snoopy. So yeah, like I think there are people that like, instead of being like, oh, they're so different than us, or like, man, like other people in other places are similar to us. We also have invented ways to change our minds or open our minds, or maybe like it's not even about taking drugs. We have, and I say we, I guess, as a white dude, but
we did bring LSD.
Yeah.
So the Sonoran Desert, they have the Sonoran Toad, and that was a lot of like Mayans and southwestern Indians and stuff like that. And then you have peyote, same thing. And then you have ayahuasca, which is the Peruvians and the Brazilians.
Right.
And then you have ibogaine or iboga from the jungle folk in Africa. And at least we brought LSD to the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
ecstasy, MDMA.
Yeah. That's a great one, right?
Blowing the top off.
Well, that was the guy. That was another desert guy, though. Deserts are where a lot of this stuff comes from, huh?
I mean, deserts, like Jim Morrison would go there to smoke his stuff, eat his peyote or whatever, snort his peyote, and he would get his visions. And a lot of these artists who, we can say how black jazz and black culture really gave way to the Elvis Presleys and things like that. But at the same time, at least the white man took the baton and ran with it because they didn't have to.
Yeah, I think like I really do think that there's been a colonial kind of as Abraham Lincoln talked about it, like a price that we've had to pay. These are original sins that generations and generations afterwards are going to have to pay for slavery and colonial kind of slavery, and for the kind of the exploitation of the natural world, and maybe we're paying for our grandfather's sins, right?
It is totally okay as well when there's a generational shift that happens. No matter what, there are going to be some civilizations or some sects of people that are going to pay. Look at what happened to Jewish people during the Holocaust and things like that, and then afterwards they found their way to the Americas and they brought us Hollywood, and I think that's okay.
I'll give you Hollywood for sure. Like those were guys in New York that started the studios out in California. Mm-hmm. Sure, we're Russian Jews and European Jews. Sure.
So, Steve, beyond talking about psychedelia, you have had the opportunity and the privilege to interview some of the top movers and shakers on our planet. Can you explain how that's impacted you? I got you. He's taking off his jacket right now. Ooh, he's got his Minnesota UFC shirt on. Dude,
I just bought it.
Dude, let's go. Okay, so you've been privileged enough to talk to some incredible people. I know John Legend comes to mind.
I've interviewed John Legend twice, just phoners though. I really like talking to people when I'm in the same room with them.
Yeah.
My industry is really print journalism.
Yep.
And it's dying. And so there's a lot less money to do things like fly me someplace to interview somebody in the same room, which is too bad, because that's when you really can interact as a human being, like we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. But man, like my first interview was in 1998 or 99 with Jesse Ventura's son Tyrell in the governor's mansion.
What was that like?
It was funny. Like there was a butler like waiting on us as we smoked our Lucky Strike lights.
Was Jesse in the building?
I don't think so. No. Tyrell had just thrown a party there and kind of made all the newspapers like a month prior. So I wanted to talk to him about you didn't ask to be the governor's son. Like, how do you handle that responsibility? Like he was around the same age. We were both in our 20s.
Yeah.
And so he was the first guy. And then I've interviewed, everybody in the world since. Yeah.
Who's the most influential, would you say?
Influential. I mean, I think I interviewed Jay-Z for Delta Sky.
What?
And I told him right away, I was like, you have changed the perception of the Horatio Alger myth in America was you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like the American dream was like you come over here and you have nothing, and then you make yourself into something. And I think Jay-Z kind of changed the perception of the American dream. Like you are in a housing project and you have no hope, but through the magic of poetry and your commercial drive to first sell drugs and then sell your poetry and your songs and find the right beat makers and make your own mythology, right? That he really has changed what the American dream means to people, And now his wife has changed what the American dream means to people. So I think, Jay-Z is probably the greatest influencer on American culture that I've ever met. And I told him that. I was like, I think you've changed the way people think about what the American dream means. I think and my anecdotal evidence for that, Hova, is that when I use Facebook or social media to kind of farm out some questions like, hey, I'm interviewing Lenny Kravitz next week. What do people want to ask Lenny Kravitz? What do you find interesting about Lenny Kravitz? And sometimes I'll get great responses. Like for that one, Robin Robinson, who was a local anchor here, told me did you know that Lenny, when he got kicked out of his dad's house, spent a few weeks on Tina Marie's couch, crashing so he could become an artist. And I was like, no, I'll ask him about that, But so I farmed these questions out, right? And everybody's always ask this or ask that, or why not this, or this is what I wanted to ask. And people are actually really smart. The hive mind thing is real. But for Jay-Z, I said that. I tell people hey, I'm interviewing Jay-Z. And they'd be like, good for you, bro. You know what I mean? Instead of asking him this or asking him that, being oh, wow, man, you're successful now. And that's what I told him. I said, Jay, when I tell people I was interviewing you, they don't give me an idea of a question to ask. They say, wow, congratulations. And then we talked and some of the most interesting thing, as I said, is you just talked about your book from. You were at the New York Public Library, the beautiful library at the Lions in front in Midtown, and you talked about how maybe were you trying to say that this book belongs in as poetry or as literature, your music, your rap is usually tied to music and tied to beats, but divorced from beats or denuded, it still stands on its own as poetry. Is that what you're trying to say? And he's like, nah, man, I just think there are some of the best words that I've ever put together. His confidence is sort of nonchalant, mm-hmm. That's why I think people are attracted to him as a hero in some ways. So when at the end of the interview, I said, I don't ask for autographs or anything, but I did bring your book along that he co-wrote with Dream Hampton, and I was wondering if you could sign it for me, and he did, and he signed it to Steve. Looks like you made it, Jay-Z.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was special.
Looks like you made it.
I wrote a cover story on Kendrick Lamar for GQ once, though, that I got ripped all over the internet for being a racist. So I've done a story on NBA fashion for GQ. I've interviewed.
Why? Hold on. Let's go back to the Kendrick article.
Yeah.
Or Kendrick cover story.
Yeah.
Why were you ripped for that?
Well, I think it was a cynical PR move on their part.
Mm-hmm. What year was this?
This is 2013.
Okay.
So.
Was this before or after Trayvon Martin?
Man, I think it was.
Slightly before?
I think it was after, right?
Whoa.
Right? Maybe. I'd have to look.
Yeah.
Why don't you look? I'll look for a minute.
Okay.
So,
You were ripped, so like what specifically was written in there where they wanted to rip your head off?
Well, I compared. It was his label that I think was upset with me.
Okay. Was that Top Dog or was that
Top Dog?
Top Dog.
So I met Top Dog Tiffith. 2012. So it was a year afterwards.
So it was fresh. It was a fresh wound.
It was fairly fresh.
Yeah.
And it was another year after that when To Kill a Butterfly came out, and Kendrick's song kind of became the Black Lives Matter anthem. But in 2013, Good Kid, Mad City had been out for like more than a year. He was just starting to become like a real household name, and he had just dropped the verse for Control, where on the Big Sean song, where he basically like eviscerates every other rapper, right? And so, in Awakening, in the same way that Good Kid, Mad City kind of was about the formalism of like L.A. kind of G-funk, you know, but like in a told from a millennial's point of view, that had grown up with that as like, 'cause he grew up in Compton, you know. I think like the Control verse was playing on some of these rap tropes of like East Coast versus West Coast and like the aggression and competitiveness of rap, right? And Top Dog Tiffith, somebody who started out as somebody high up in the Bloods and high up involved in kind of like that kind of organized crime and trying to come into a more legitimate business of making music and having this influential label. I think like I still stand by it. I compared him to Suge Knight, right? And he had compared it himself to Suge Knight in an issue of Vibe like 2 or 3 months earlier, right?
So you were going with the flow.
I was using the language that I thought I was within my rights to use, right?
In a sense, you were quoting.
In a sense, I was quoting him. But they released a statement when the article dropped on a Monday, and I was in Lebanon. I was in Beirut, Lebanon during this time, too, and I had a scary... I had just kind of survived this scary confrontation with Hezbollah on the Syrian border. And so I was all shook, but I came home and I was sleeping, and my wife tapped me on the leg and said, "Steve, TMZ is talking about you."
Oh, no.
And so Top Dog Tiffith and TDE released a statement accusing my of the racial overtones in the article and about how they guard this with their lives. Another part in the piece that got me in trouble that was like analyzed in the Atlantic, and Gawker was still around at the time, and everybody got their think pieces in, you know. But I was at the VMAs that year where Kendrick rapped with Robin Thicke, and like in the middle of this Miley Cyrus song or whatever, and Kendrick came out and did a feature.
And Imagine Dragons too?
I think maybe. Yeah, it was like a big mess, and Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines was like, it started like that, and then it went to a Miley track, and then Kendrick and 2 Chainz came out, like, and it was just like one of those like VMA extravaganzas. So like backstage, Kanye was doing Blood on the Leaves later that night, and Drake, I don't know what song he was doing. So Kanye had a room, and Drake had a room, and Kendrick had a room, and I was in Kendrick's room, and there was, you know, champagne and booze or whatever, and so there was parties going on everywhere else. And in Kendrick's room, it was like these guys were like, I don't know, like the Black Panthers or something. Like they're not touching it. They're like ready for war, you know. Like we're gonna keep clear heads. And I was like, hey man, like why aren't you enjoying any of this, you know? And he's like, well, when we first started playing out, I rolled with a bigger crew, and I got into some fights in clubs in LA, so really pared it back and really kind of like decided to bring some like kind of like organizational discipline to the way we would roll. So I talked about their discipline in the story, and like Mike Will Made It would visit Kendrick's room just to take the champagne splits because nobody else was drinking them because the line was too long for booze in Kanye's room and Drake's room. So he'd like come over and be like, "Hey, how you guys doing? I'm just gonna take a couple more of these. Is that cool?" Like everybody's having a good time except for TDE's crew, you know. So I pointed that out in the story, and then later on in the when I went back to their hotel room after the performance. Top Dog Tiffith is like, all right, we're gonna go to this party downtown, so we'll see you later. And I was like, all right, like I was really surprised at how like calm you guys were about this whole thing, and like not really going buck wild at all, you know, and everybody else is like Drake had this whole crew with OVO sweatshirts on that are turning up, you know, and then so Top Dog says, "Oh, we're about to go get uncalm, if you know what I mean." I'm like, "Cool," you know, and I just like wrote that scene in the story, and they got pissed about it, as if why would somebody be surprised that we would have discipline behind the scenes, as if I thought that like all black people should be smoking weed and drinking Alizé or something, you know?
Right. So that's where
I think like we lost a lot of context too, because he became a Man of the Year candidate as the Control verse kind of blew up. That they put him on. They went from like, hey, we're going to run this in the November issue as a big feature to like, let's put him on the cover of the January issue, and maybe you lose a couple pages. So I think maybe the context of that story got lost a little bit.
Does that make sense though, with kind of going through, because there was Kendrick got shafted by Macklemore in the heist for Good Kid, Mad City. Right. He was gonna win all the Grammys.
No, I think he got passed over for To Kill a Butterfly.
No, because then he went and won with To Kill a Butterfly.
No, I think he won with
To Pimp
Damn.
a Butterfly. Oh, that's right. He got passed over by To Pimp a Butterfly.
Right.
So there was, but between, because I've been listening to him since day one, and to kind of...
Well, how far back is day one?
The album before...
Section 8?
Section 8.
Yeah.
One of my friends put me on. I was like, how does more people not know about this guy? And I was making music at the time, so we were basically emulating everything they were doing with their beats on that, and with their vocals, we were emulating all that with ours. And because they were on something with Section 8. Section 80.
Section 80.
Section 80. So then you go into Good Kid, Mad City, and it was how he was projecting their lifestyle. And they were, going into houses, ripping them off, stuff like that. And then it was kind of, so look at that oxymoron, Good Kid, Mad City. Same thing with To Pimp a Butterfly, a beautiful butterfly. And then Kendrick had this manic episode that I think might have been...
he had the manic episode before... Good Kid, Mad City.
It was before, because I don't know.
Yeah,
he just told the story in To Pimp a Butterfly.
But he also talks about what song is it? It's at the end of Good Kid, Mad City, where underwater he's drinking. It's the drinking song.
Pull up, drink.
Yeah. Right,
headshot, drink. Yep.
Right, like I'm losing it. I'm losing my mind. Like I'm.
Nah. Right. I done grew up around some people living their life in bottles.
So like that's and he's this whirlwind is around him, and he's trying to find Shireen in the like he can't even get with his girl to make all the madness stop. So like in the same way, I recognize that was going on in his life in 2013 when he's at the VMAs and this fucking circus is going on around him, and he's trying to find like he's like a monk. You know what I mean? Like he's wearing he reminded me of like Tyson coming to the ring, when Tyson would come into the ring with like he'd cut a hole in a towel and he'd wear like really low black socks and his boots were like real simple, and everybody else is like covered in sequins and stuff. That's the way Kendrick was at the Barclays. It was like, here's this guy that's like on a holy mission, and everybody else around him is just kind of like enjoying the trappings of fame and fortune and what happens when you become a culture. And here's somebody who's like on a mission, and I think. I don't know. I think I was asking the right questions, maybe in the wrong forum. And also we're at a time in the culture when we started questioning, like, do you have to be a black person to write about a black person? Do you have to be a gay person to write about a gay person? Like, what the identity of the interlocutor is the person asking questions is the same, has to be the same as the person answering the questions.
That bubble was, that's why I asked if it was around Trayvon Martin, because that bubble was yet to burst, and it feels like you faced the backlash.
I think I was one of the first. I think if you, I was one of the first people to get the backlash. Yeah, I can write about that someday.
So, like, because Steve, you found
which is interesting. We're talking about psychedelia and going to places where maybe you don't belong and experiencing things that are either forbidden or not meant for you or designed by a different culture than you. And, but a vulture is dining on something that's dead, you know? That's not what I'm doing.
Are you looking at it as your mission to kind of portray the story that not necessarily is even wanted to be heard, but it needs to be told?
Part of me is like, oh man, like Kendrick. Like, part of me is like, I'm on a holy mission to uncover the truth. And part of me is like, I'm on a holy mission to show that life is a really fucking great time, right? Like, and part of the great time you're going to experience is the amount of time that you spend reading my words or listening to me or seeing me interview somebody, right? Or reading me interview somebody. So, like, I think that's what I'm trying to do. If I was only allowed to talk to people who had truck driver fathers who grew up in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, and if that was if that was the class and the race and the strata that I was confined to, like, that would be a tragedy, man. You know, like, that's my dad once told me when I got an earring, he said, don't ever join the military and don't drive trucks, right? Like, I disqualified myself from the things that were a part of his life, you know? And fuck yeah, man, fine. You know? Like, I am on a different trip. I love where I'm from, and I love my family, and I love my people, but I went out the front door, man, and I'm trying to find what else is out there.
When you were in these rooms, were you kind of looked at as someone who didn't belong, or were you just looked at as just another goofball?
Well, like when? Like
at the VMAs? Because I'm trying to picture you either being a fly on the wall.
I'm 6'3", 275, right?
With some goofy fucking hair.
Some goofy hair, right? I'm going to be looked at as a goofball or somebody like I am not able to fit in, right? Like, I don't fit in this fucking chair, in this room, in this world, right? So I'm a formidable presence. People respond to me the way they respond to somebody else, anybody who is a formidable presence. Yep. And I'm not a fly on the wall. I am a 6'4", 275-pound fly. That's really difficult, you know? So, and I also, I'm not refined, maybe, in a way that some other kind of people in the media are. I think a lot of people in the media come from a white-collar professional background where they know where the salad forks go, where they have been in a country club before and know how to talk that talk, right? I've had to learn a lot of that, and I'm not interested in a lot of that.
And I know that because when I see you behind the scenes at all this stuff,
Yeah.
you have your hat on, you got your goofy glasses on, you got your twins jacket on,
Right.
you're rolling in like you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with who I am. And so much of our culture right now is telling you not to be, right? Like, so yeah.
I'm comfortable with who I am.
Yeah, like you're like my friend Lizzo, or we used to be friends when she lived here.
Who's blowing up right
Who's
now?
blowing the fuck up right now? Her message is one of love yourself. You know, like do you think the world has been easy on her, even though she is a gift? She can blow the flute like nobody else, and she can rap. I mean, Lizzo can listen to whatever the hit rap song is and rap it word for word a second later. Like, she has an autodidact's mind. Like, to say nothing of like the words that she's created her own, or the way she's just the amount of joy that she brings. And do you think it's been difficult for like a gigantic black woman like that? Like, yeah, it's been. I'm sure people haven't. When I started seeing Lizzo, she would be at my parties downtown Minneapolis, and she'd be on the bed, kind of quiet by herself. You know, like she has created this person, right, through force of will and a volcanic joy that comes from her. But yeah, like she has no choice but to be herself. So you might as well enjoy it.
And it's beautiful. Talk about timing with her, a gigantic black woman who is uber talented, who is able to, because Missy Elliott, who she now has a hit single with.
Right.
Missy Elliott kind of took that over, where she's a wide-hipped black woman with beautiful big lips who was not ashamed of who the hell she was, what her mother created.
Right.
And she was finally free. She was able to
super
be
duper fly, man.
super duper fly.
Right. And then that Hype Williams video where she used the inflatable suit to accentuate her curves, make her blow up even bigger, you know, like a Teletubby size, you know, like not like I do think you have to own it, man. I'm inspired by these people. I hope I can inspire people to not like to give themselves a break, you know, to like be cool and realize that like if you come at something with curiosity and with the intent either to ask difficult questions or to at least care about what you're talking about, and you know, like I don't just walk in there not knowing anything about where I'm going unless I'm going to Peru to drink ayahuasca. But for the most part, I try to be more prepared than any other interviewer that this person will ever talk to. I realize a lot of the people I talk to have been interviewed ad nauseum, sometimes in the same day, several different times. A lot of them have been in magazines too many times, to be honest. Like, they're interviewed out. So I better have a way not only to know everything about them, but to also like be able to ask my questions in a way that will get at a dramatic reaction, right? So I'm asking for it in some ways. I'm asking for drama. So like when the Kendrick thing, yeah, like I was trying to be provocative in some ways. And when you provoke, sometimes you get in a little bit undesirable heat. But yeah, like, so it's not easy what I do.
You offer unique angles.
But you have to think about it, right? You have to offer something different, either a greater level of expertise or a story more expertly told or drama.
We're going to talk about Hunter S. Thompson until Kingdom Comes.
Yeah, he was good at it, right?
Yeah, his Gonzo style.
His Gonzo style, but like I will say with Hunter, I think Hunter was a maladjusted hurt person. And an asshole, right?
Definitely an asshole for sure.
An asshole, like somebody who like felt the need to disrupt because he was a misanthrope, right? I feel like sometimes I have the desire to disrupt because I think things can be better, you know? I think maybe he did too, but I think he focused on fuck these people, man. like whether they're people at the Kentucky Derby or whether they're cops or whether they're Hell's Angels. I think a lot of the brilliance that propelled Hunter was anger, fury, and man, I used to be angrier than I am now. I think ayahuasca has helped with that.
It really has, hasn't it?
It really did, man.
Do you think it's really helped out your craft? Because since then you've interviewed some of the most influential people on the planet.
And before then, I mean, by the time I did ayahuasca, I had been 10 years deep into it, and now I'm 20. I mean, I've been doing this since I graduated from college in '98. So 20 years, I've been a journalist, and I still have some of the same problems that I did when I started out, which is like it takes me too long to get started. Mm-hmm. Like the blank page is so scary to me still. I do think about too much what people are going to think of me when I write. Like what like are they going to be impressed by what I'm writing as they are by like and I don't even my name doesn't even belong in the same breath as people like Alex Papademos or God, this whoever's writing for The Ringer right now, or whoever's writing for The New Yorker, or Brian Phillips is just this amazing writer who's written for The Ringer, MTV and stuff.
Bill Simmons has created a monster there.
I love him, man.
I know.
Like who I love more than Bill Simmons is Chuck Klosterman.
I've heard of him.
Oh, dude, he's my
Klosterman?
guy. Klosterman.
Yeah.
He corrected me a long time ago. It's Klosterman.
It's Klosterman. Oh shit! And you just passed. Yeah, that's the butterfly effect, right?
That's
there.
From his mom. So yeah, I mean, I think these guys that I look up to and women too, like I get scared. I get nervous that I'm not as good as them, or like maybe reading me is a waste of time if you can read Brian Phillips, So those anxieties I still have, and those are the ones I had when I was a kid.
But those are what make you.
Anxiety. I wish, man. I wish I had maybe. I think like if I had the perfect. Yesterday. Yesterday I went to my friend Brad Zeller, who's a great writer, man, really great, and he built a 300 square foot little room outside of his house that he shares with his wife. Okay, just right, kind of connected to the garage. Mm-hmm. It's magnificent. And sometimes I'm like, man, if I had a sanctum sanctorum like that, if I had all the right stuff, I could just have a little bit more quiet, and I could start the piece a little bit earlier. But man, honestly, sometimes I think I'm going to get fired. It's like you're staring at the blank page for 3 days, and all you can do is read another think piece on Game of Thrones or whatever, and another story about who the Vikings drafted with the 18th pick or whatever.
Garrett Bradbury, baby.
I like him.
Yep.
So it's a lot easier to read for me than it always has been to write. I think the true love of my life is reading, and that can become like an addiction. I'd rather read than have to reread the stupid words that I just came up with over the last hour. Mm-hmm. So yeah, in terms of am I less confrontational with my subjects? Have I developed more empathy? Yeah. And that's not just because of ayahuasca. That's just from being a human being and living longer and embarrassing. And
you travel a lot.
I travel a lot, but travel a lot. Meet a lot of new people and who have lived and grown up in ways that are a lot different than how I did. And also, then the further afield you go, and then you were like, wait, this person grew up in a completely different world than I did, but we have so much in common. You know, like I can see like my thoughts and feelings and fears in this person. You know. And then sometimes you're like, who am I fooling? Why am I writing about somebody I've just met for an hour and a half? You know? So yeah, like it's been a trip, man.
You seem to have taken your own route as a butterfly inside of a cocoon, and now you are spreading your wings in a different form.
I mean, I've been flying for a long time, man.
Well, you do epic shit, and that's kind of what draws me in, and someone like me where I'm the type to, I take leaps too. I just go. I ask questions later. Yes, if I'm given an opportunity, let's get down to Costa Rica, whatever that may be, just because of Uncle Denny.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Well, I said yeah that day. Meanwhile, I'm throwing a $250,000 event in 2 weeks. Like, I had no answers.
Right.
And I see that out of you. And I think that's why, dude, I've been on you for the last 2 years to get a fucking interview. And now finally we got to sit down.
We got it done.
We got it
done.
I have to ask you before we go, because we're coming close on time. What's the most memorable Timberwolves game you've ever attended?
Well, in the beginning, in 1989, it wasn't about who the Timberwolves were. It was about who the opponent was. So I got to see Larry Bird and Kevin McHale in the same building, right?
Yeah.
And then you know, playoffs, like my first like when I got to go by myself and stuff was like the Terrell Brandon years at Post Marbury. So it was like so those games were great, and seeing KG in his prime was great. And then when KG returned was great. And but man, like it's so sad that one of my favorite Timberwolves games ever was the game against Denver last year to get into the playoffs. Like, isn't that the frustrating thing about this Timberwolves team? It's like, excuse me, but isn't that the frustrating thing? It's like how illusory and how much we're all fooling ourselves is that one of my favorite games, maybe my favorite experience. Like, cause like I was in San Francisco when they beat Sacramento in Game 7, and that's like the greatest Timberwolves game I've seen on TV, and that was in the Target Center when during KG's MVP season.
2005?
Yeah, I think so, right? Yeah. That brought us to the Western Conference Finals, and then Sam Cassell hurt himself doing the big balls dance in that game, and wasn't the same in the Western Conference Finals, so that we blew that. But like, in terms of me being in the building, most memorable is this last year, this game 82, not 2019, but 2018, game 82, Jimmy Butler. That Denver team is really good, as we've seen. Now Denver becomes a number 2 seed this year, and we're out of the playoffs and a disaster again, and wondering about who our new GM is going to be. So they're frustrating, man. I came into this world as a Boston Celtics fan, and I'm looking forward to Game 1 versus the Bucks on Sunday. It's weird. I feel like it's like when you've been dating a girl and you still have your ex-girlfriend deep in your phone numbers somewhere, you know, or you like look at her like on Facebook occasionally or something weird. Like that's how I feel about the Celtics and the Timberwolves, you know, because I was already a teenager when the Timberwolves became a thing. Like, so I can always cheat on him with the Celtics.
Well, how proud of you KG were you when he went and got his first championship with the Celtics? I
rooted for them so hard. And then plus it was like, okay, fuck it. I'm not going to be a Timberwolves fan. I'll be a Celtics fan again. And I get to root against the Lakers, you know?
And for KG.
And for KG.
And for our original draft pick, Ray Allen.
Yeah, exactly. And because Marbury screwed us.
Yes. I was at the game where Rodman kicked the cameraman in the nuts.
Wow.
That was powerful, but it was beyond the fact that Rodman kicked the cameraman that night.
Wow.
It was that I saw this flamboyant well-dressed man walking courtside with high heels on and two beautiful 6-foot models to his left and right.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Party Like His 1999's playing in the loudspeakers, and I see this guy. I always heard this song. I love this song. I waited for 1999 to happen specifically because of this song, but here he is, the man formerly known. And it was incredible because I saw him in person.
Wow.
And I was like, that's him? Oh, and he has handles too? And he's wearing high heels? Holy hee. It was just like, this can't be happening. It was like, because I grew up in the Valley in a small town. I didn't have MTV until I moved to the metropolis in the early 2000s. So I didn't have music videos, none of that shit. I had to rely on radio, KDWB. And they're the ones who provided me with culture. And to see him in the flesh was a game changer for me. And then it was the same night that Rodman kicked his hand.
Like, that's Michael Jackson. That's not Prince.
But when I think of
they
Prince,
both have the falsetto. They both have the falsetto.
I think of him because I put him in the same ballpark because equally as talented and just phenomenal. And they kind of had that female side to him.
Yeah, the falsetto, like this vulnerable, like Justin Vernon, Bon Iver, he's got a falsetto. Like a beautiful falsetto provides an immediate contact, not between just women and men, but between men and men. It's a vulnerability thing.
Did you ever get a chance to meet the Prince of Purple Rain?
I did not, man. I never got to.
Really?
Yeah. I'm jealous of all the journalists in town, whether it's Andrea Swenson or Melissa Mayers or Neil.
Have you had a chance to meet some of the? You've obviously went and drank ayahuasca with some of the top underground and rhymesayers artists. Have you had a chance to be on Lizzo, kind of get down with Atmosphere or anyone?
I've interviewed Slug. Mm-hmm. Yep, and he did not like our interview at first. Then he called me a few times subsequently and texted with me. I think he might be like a lonely old man, like in his lair somewhere in South Minneapolis. Uh-huh. I've interviewed Brother Ali. That was fascinating. Yeah, those are the two. I've always wanted to talk to Ant. I'd love to talk to Ant someday.
I talked to him about soccer.
Yeah, he's a soccer guy?
No, he's not. But he was so surprised that I chose to talk to him about that. It was actually at the X Games kickoff show last summer at the prop show, and we were backstage. Brother Ali was there, and Ant, and I didn't care that Brother Ali was over there. I just cared that, oh my fucking God, I'm drinking whiskey with Ant right now. So I started talking to him about soccer and the World Cup coming up and stuff, and he's like, "Cool, man," and you could just tell he didn't give a
care
fuck
at all.
But it's moments like that in Minnesota, where you can travel around West Hollywood and stuff like that, and you might run into some people, but I feel like we can have more culture shifting conversations with some of our local acts who have made it around here, and that's
do you think that artists from here or came up here are more accessible than people?
Basically, is what I'm saying. More accessible.
Yeah, for sure. But that being said, until I got the Slug interview, he would have been just as difficult to get him as, somebody like Jay-Z or something. You know what I mean? I don't know that how readily available somebody like that is to local media, I think it was an album cycle, so I'm sure. But I think there's still some mystique to him, to Slug. I don't know if we really know who that guy is yet.
Yeah, I don't know if we do either, and he is kind of popping up. And I like how he just put Cashanova on a track that they released this past summer. Cashanova did the chorus, and I really like how he's tapping into kind of that millennial vein Where even like the reason I bring up accessibility is because like Prof's accessible, Nimic Revenue's accessible, free Wi-Fi while they were popping was accessible. And just like the Steve Marshes are accessible because of the internet. It's allowed for that.
Right. I mean, one of the things I think that the Prince overdosing on opioids robbed us from is the chance to see somebody like that who was only 57 grow into like a grand kind of man of the like somebody who's people this generation would be able to look up to, who didn't come up with him, you know, like. And I think like that's going to happen with Slug, right? Yeah. Like he's going to
eventually tell his story.
Yeah. Hope like Prince's like autobiography that he attempted to finish, his memoirs are going to come out partially this fall, and but we're never going to hear the full story, you know, and maybe with Slug we will, you know, and also we'll see him be perceived by a generation that didn't come up like with rhymesayers, you know. That rhymesayers just kind of what always was for them. Because I think like aren't millennial fans of like Prof and stuff that, like they still love Slug, right?
Well, they do, but a lot of them are ignorant to the effect that they really had on the Twin Cities scene.
Right.
Because they're, we just threw a sold out Prof show like a month ago, and a lot of the demographic was smaller town kids.
Yeah.
Who were really just coming in, you know?
That's interesting though. That's Prof's crowd is interesting.
They're zoo animals. They're fucking zoo animals.
They're crazy little kids, huh?
Well, because look at Atmosphere's demographic. It was a lot of Beat Boys. It was a lot of, it was like inner city crowd that finally had a voice. And then Doomtree helped out with that as well.
Right.
It gave the inner city a voice.
So what is Prof's crowd then? They're kids, rural kids or suburban kids?
Yeah, a lot of rural suburban kids is what it is. And the numbers showed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he really he speaks for them in some way.
Yeah, he does, and he's going back out to Denver with Atmosphere this fall. I don't know if they're going to do Prof Outdoors again. They had kind of leaked out that last year might be their last year, but we'll see. But he's also high up on the Soundset docket every year,
right?
Which steals the show. Last year stole the show. We are so lucky. Prof is, and I can honestly say this. In whatever order, you go Prince, and then it's either Prof or Lizzo as best performers to ever come from this state. And I've seen Bob Dylan live a couple times. He's an old man you can't understand on stage.
Yeah, but did you see Dave Pirner in his prime?
No.
Oh, dude.
Send me videos.
Oh, my God.
Because Prof...
And the replacements in their prime, it could go either way.
I don't know, though, dude. There's one thing with Prof is how he steals the entire environment.
What about Kat? Have you seen Kat Jellin from Babes in Toyland? In her prime?
No.
See that? Actually, see her now. She still can just wreck a stage, man.
See, I've got to see all this. I've got to experience.
That's the thing. You're missing. You're missing.
You're kind of biased. No, but Lizzo's killing it right now. We were actually on a short list for her. I put in an offer. We're going to bring her down to the arena in Rochester. And that Missy Elliott song came out. And before I know it, we're going to return your offer because she's not booking for the rest of the year. She's fucking booked out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, she's booked out.
She's booked out.
She just booked October. She sold out the what's the place downtown? The Armory.
Yeah, the Armory.
8,000 people. Yep. Sold out 2 shows in a matter of hours.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. She'll come to Rochester, man, eventually.
She just sells out so quick, and it's a sure thing, and it's where the hype train is rolling, and she deserves it. She's so freaking talented.
Yeah, she's great. Who else is a great performer? Harmar Superstar. Have you ever seen him live?
Yep. He actually played Kathy's. He played Kathy's, which is the second floor of a bar downtown Rochester. Fits maybe 180.
Wow.
And he played that
Just
last
blew
year.
it up.
Blew it up.
Yeah.
Blew it up.
Can't believe the place is still standing.
Didn't he just do the opening ceremony for the Twins?
He did he did the national anthem. He sang the
National
national
anthem?
Yeah, my brother and I were out in the
You were on
infield
the field with him.
with his mom. Yeah. Sean and I have had a very interesting history. We've been close friends for like 10 years. I've known of him like way longer than that. And now his realtor has helped me buy a house in Northeast. Like, we're growing up, man.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Still can't escape Northeast.
I don't want to. I don't know why my Polish ancestors did. They left and went to the suburbs. I'm coming back.
Attaboy. Steve, thank you so much for giving me the time.
Yeah, man. It was my pleasure.
Where can people reach you?
They can follow me on Steven Hero on Twitter and on Instagram. You can read my stuff nearly every month in Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine and Delta Sky Magazine, and see you on the internets.
Peace out, bro.
All right.